Hello, my name is Catharine Hydon and I'm an early childhood consultant from Victoria. Today's Talking About Practice video is an opportunity for us to explore Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of knowing and being, and the way that we can embed those ideas into everyday practice with children and families in early childhood education and care settings around Australia. It'll also be an opportunity for us to think about reconciliation, the building of relationships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and the broader Australian community, and the place that this has in everyday practice in early childhood education and care. We're joined today by a couple of practitioners who have been thinking about these ideas in their work over some years and have been brave enough to join us and talk a little bit about what that might look like. They will talk a little bit about the mistakes they've made, the opportunities they've created, the challenges they've had, and the successes in terms of building relationships with the community that they're part of. Denise, welcome to the Talking About Practice videos today. Can you tell us perhaps a little bit about who you are and the service that you work in?
Sure, my name's Denise Rundle. I work at Burundara Kindergarten and I'm the coordinator there, but I also teach one of the kindergarten groups. We're based in Richmond, which is an inner city suburb of Melbourne. And we have a very diverse community socioeconomically as well as culturally and linguistically. We have people in private and public housing, but we are situated on the edge of the a large public housing estate, so a lot of our families do live there. And we have about 85% of our families are learning English as an additional language when they come to kindergarten.
Thanks, Denise, and welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Catherine. I manage children's services at the University of Melbourne. Again, an inner city site with 2 childcare centres, mainly serving staff and students of the university. In some ways a very diverse community, but in other ways quite a privileged community. We have children who speak approximately 40 different languages at home using our services.
I'd like to begin by a bit of a reflection about the place of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, ways of knowing and being in everyday practice, and with a particular reference to the guiding principle that is in the National Quality Framework, that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures are valued. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that's important in the work that we do every day with children?
I think it's important because valuing children means valuing who they are and recognising the society in which we live. So those things, irrespective of whether or not it's in the National Quality Framework, are essential underpinnings of good early childhood practice.
I would agree, because it is really the community in which we live that unless we learn and acknowledge and understand about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of knowing in general, and specifically about the local area where I work, it's the Wurundjeri land, the traditional Wurundjeri lands. So it's learning specifically about the Wurundjeri people as well. Then we're not actually being educators. We're not talking about reflecting what is Australian society.
And Denise, is there a difference between embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures into your everyday practice and reconciliation?
Well, I would have to say that at Burundara Kindergarten we haven't discussed are we doing this for reconciliation. If I look on my general understanding of reconciliation is that for us to be reconciled as a nation, everyone needs to be a lot more educated and understanding of the true history of our country. And so therefore if early childhood educators are educating themselves so that they can therefore help educate the community with whom they're working, that's obviously a really important stepping stone to reconciliation. But reconciliation is a two-way street. I might be ready to reconcile, but it doesn't mean the person down the road is ready to be reconciled with me. And who walks that road and who leads it. But unless we have educated people with everybody understanding what is the true history and the true lived experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia, there will be no reconciliation.
Reconciliation to me is about understanding, and understanding comes from knowledge, and the key to effectively embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into our curriculum is through us as teachers, as educators, having knowledge.
So perhaps some of your advice for people who are thinking about this area is to start getting to know their own local communities. Would that be right?
Look, I think when somebody said that to me once, oh, you should find out who your local Aboriginal community is, I thought, where do I start? I actually think people need to find a way that they're comfortable with, and certainly for me, I needed some knowledge. I needed to read information, I needed to understand the political situation of people today, I needed to try and understand why people might feel that way, act that way, what I know about children's development, when there's trauma involved in children's development. Well, when I applied that knowledge to Aboriginal communities in general, we're talking about people who have suffered trauma for the last over 200 years since colonisation, and that can't be shied away from. That doesn't mean I sit down and talk. I don't use that knowledge in my day-to-day conversations with children, but it guides my understanding, and my understanding needs to be broader than what I'm talking to children and families about. So that's what I did, and then because I've been lucky to meet up with people who also want to, within my workplace and also within my social circle, who are very interested in that issue, joining Reconciliation Australia, for example, those have all been important things for me to learn. And in doing that, relationships happen. We did have a family that came and they did share, and we have formed a good relationship with that family. We've also had other families of the similar background who've come who we have not formed those relationships with. Working in the City of Yarra, they employ a local Wurundjeri elder, Colin Hunter, and he has worked with us over time as well and given us a way into some knowledge, but it's very much a two-way street, that unless we're also learning for ourselves, we can't then engage with the local community. So I think people have to find out what works best for them.
And some of the ways of doing that are following your own interests and passions. And when we've been thinking about this, you know, if you're interested in sport, there's this whole tradition of Aboriginal, particularly Aboriginal sports people, the great moments of Kathy Freeman's story, Adam Goods in recent times, Nicky Winmar's famous statement. So if you're a sporty person, there's a way in there. Contemporary Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander arts and crafts, again, there's a way in. You start exploring those things, you find out more and more, you find out the stories, you find out about the communities that art comes from. A great way of building your knowledge. Reading, I asked some of the staff I work with to give me some ideas about the ways that they've found their way into exploring these issues, and some of it was reading books, fiction, non-fiction, autobiographies, those sorts of things. So there are a range of ways, as well as being involved in organisations, finding out about local resources.
I would quote what Colin Hunter has said to us: small steps often. That it needs, and that really sums it up. Small steps often. Do it a lot, do it slowly. If you're wanting to have consultation takes time. You're consulting with a community that has lots of demands upon it. Your demand is no more important than anyone else's. So small steps often. I think a small step is certainly finding out what is the local country. That's really vital. And once you know that, and that there's understanding about that, and that you can call it that, then you can name it with children. You can say, we are on Wurundjeri land. But if you look around the classrooms here at Burundara Kindergarten, you're going to see very simply in our home corner area, there will be blankets with red, black and yellow. If you ask the children what do those colours mean on the Aboriginal flag, they will be able to tell you that it's, you know, yellow for the sun, red for the country, and black for the people. And that blanket is not just used on a black baby, it's just there as a general thing. And if you think back to the early days when we started looking at diversity of cultures, that instead of for 2 weeks in your home corner you had the Chinese teapot, you just have it out all the time, and it's just part of what you do. Certainly I think people could look at using Indigenous animals, Indigenous plants in terms of their imaginative play. We teach the children all about the farm animals, and the African wild animals, but do the children know that many Indigenous animals beyond our national emblem? And I think that in doing that, you're connecting children to the place where they live, because we all live here now. This is our shared country, and I think that that's to look at those things sets you on a journey to say, well, where can I go further? And I think that we have to be brave and say that this is what we're doing. And if somebody does ask you a hard question, have a think about why it's a hard question. Parents ask us hard questions all the time. It's just that we feel vulnerable on that. As Brian said, we feel that we don't know where to start and we're afraid of getting it wrong. Those challenges don't go away, and I don't think they should. We should be constantly reflecting, what am I doing? Is that what I should be saying? Oh, I wish I'd said that differently. I'm sure we'll listen to this tape and go, oh, I wish I said that differently. It's just the way it is. But by and large, any feedback, well actually I would have to say any feedback we've had is positive. We obviously haven't heard anyone that felt negatively about what we've been doing, but we've had responses like, I've lived here for 40 years, I've never known this, at last I can talk to my children about this. Now I understand when I see land acknowledgement signs around the country, when I go camping, all of those things, it's like a relief. People say, now I know I can answer my children's questions, or I know who to ask, or I know where to look.
And the other challenge I find in the services that we have is, how do you embed these things with children who don't speak yet, with babies, with infants and toddlers? The conversations have to be different. The resources you use are perhaps less explicit, but we have to find ways of just having that presence. Like Denise said, the blankets made in the colours, those are the ways that children become familiar with, that families will ask questions about, so those conversations can happen with the adults, but children's experiences include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives or cultures. I think it's around children's openness to learning more, but also some acknowledgement of that our story has First Peoples as part of it, and that for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, Australia is a very special place, and the rest of us all came later.
And I wonder, in finishing, whether there is any other advice that you might have for people who are interested in exploring this idea. As you have rightly pointed out, many of us are a bit worried about making mistakes and are might feel a bit defeated if they try a few things and don't get much response. So is there any further advice that you would offer to educators who are wanting to explore this idea?
Go for it. It's so exciting. There's so much to learn. There are great relationships to form. If you start on the journey, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people you encounter will always enthusiastically embrace what you're doing. You might occasionally get it wrong. You'll always be told very gently when you get it wrong. It is a fantastic journey. It has completely enriched my life as an individual, but also as a teacher.
Thank you very much.